My guest today is Katie Fowlkes. Katie was a UT student. She was a finance major and had an international business collateral. She graduated in 2019. So she's you're fresh into your career now. But Katie spent a lot of her life in Knoxville. Of course, spent time at UT, and now Katie is a financial analyst at Kroger in Cincinnati. And so, welcome, Katie. Thanks so much for talking to us today. And congratulations on starting your career, kind of straddling this COVID season and learning to navigate that. I'm sure that's an interesting thing as you start your job.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Let's just cut right to the chase. Your title is financial analyst, and I would call your job a corporate finance job. So can you just tell us what do you do? What's your job as a financial analyst?
Yeah, so it was funny when I told people I was working for Kroger, I always had to clarify like corporate Kroger because people would be like, in the stores Kroger. But yeah, I'm a financial analyst in what's called our capital management group. So anytime anyone in the company wants to spend more than $2 million worth of capital, it has to go through our group first. So that can span any area of the business. It can be on our real estate side. So if a Kroger store is going to be built or remodeled or expanded or relocated, that's a project that we would handle, but it can also be other work streams of the business. So we look at technology investments, we look at marketing investments, supply chain, warehouse investments, just completely across the board. So those different groups, whether it's a work stream or the real estate team, they will submit a packet of documents to our group that's inclusive of a summary of the project and then a financial model, an IRR. And our role is to evaluate the project and really just be the objective eye on the project. So these work streams have been working on these projects for up to a year, and they're very close to it. But it's our job to be that objective financial eye and really be able to summarize what's the value of the project, but also what is the potential financial risk within the project. So the project gets to us, we do the review, and the output of our review is essentially a 2 to 3 page write-up. And like I said, it'll include an IRR, and then it'll include a high-level summary as well as risks of the project. And then from our group, it goes directly to what's called our capital committee, which consists of our CEO, our CFO, and all of our C-suite leaders. And once a month, they'll sit down and discuss all these capital projects and ultimately make a decision on whether or not to approve and move forward. So that is probably 75% of my work. The other items that I handle are some ad hoc analysis. So our group is fortunate in that we're quite close to leadership. So whenever the CEO or CFO has a random analysis question that he wants answered, like, does building a fuel station save a struggling Kroger store? They'll come to our group and we'll do that ad hoc analysis. And then the final piece of my work is reporting, whether that be quarterly reporting or yearly reporting. And one specific report I wanted to call out was pretty cool, is I do the bottom 100 report, which is the lowest 100 performing stores in the enterprise. And I pull those together and work with all the division leaders to understand why that store might be struggling and come up with a strategy to try to improve moving forward.
So, as you describe this, I think back to, or I think you can easily think back to your time as a finance student at UT, and I think about some of the things that we teach in our corporate focused classes, and in our intro class, from very early on, we're talking about these things that we just loosely call projects, and in Finance 301 or Finance 306 language, it sort of consists of, at a very bare bones version, you've got an initial investment, so some cash outlay, and a series of inflows, and we just start teaching mechanics, and we just say, hey, okay, calculate with this series of cash flows, calculate an internal rate of return, compare it to a hurdle rate, decide if this is an accept or reject, calculate an NPV, compare it to zero, decide if it's an accept or reject. And then as we move a little bit farther, we start actually calculating what those cash flows are. So we say, okay, well, let's back up now. So now let's actually start with, incremental revenues and incremental costs, and we got taxes, and then we're going to cash flows by adding back depreciation and all that. And we ended up with free cash flows. So then we create the timeline, and then we do the calculation again. And then we really start scratching our heads, and we think, well, what are the assumptions that go into this number or that number? And so, does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, I would say my job is just a step forward from that, really bringing to life an actual project. So instead of it being you spend $400 and then you make $200 a year into perpetuity, it's actually like, we want to build a new Kroger store. We want to build a manufacturing center, and these are the benefits that are going to come out of it. So I would think it's just one step further of what we learned in school. And I would say if you enjoy your intro to finance class, then you'll probably enjoy corporate finance.
That's that's awesome. I think one thing that I try to tell my students is we start with just some basic tools. So the calculation itself. And we work and work and work and work and work, and we think it's a big victory to get to the point where we can actually calculate these things. And in some sense it is, right? It's a stepping stone, but for you, I imagine day one, you had to be able to do all that just lights out. I mean, it's understood that you can do that so that you can get into the we'll just call it the more interesting stuff, sort of like everything that goes in to the calculations and the overall project itself. So tell me a little more about, you use the term model. You see a financial model. The project is all sort of oriented around a model. So what exactly are we talking about there when you say model?
So every project that we evaluate from an incremental perspective. Meaning we are not just looking at the cash flows of the project in isolation. It's in comparison to our do nothing scenario. And in a project like remodeling a store, our do nothing scenario might be literally doing nothing. Either we're going to remodel the store or we're not going to touch it. But in other project scenarios, the do nothing might be a lesser investment, or something of that nature. So every time we're evaluating cash flows, it's, like I said, from an incremental perspective.
I want to shift gears now. I want to talk about your work environment itself. So just from talking to you in the past, it's my understanding that you're part of a team. So there's other folks that are kind of like you in sort of what they bring to the game, and then there's other folks involved as well. And in that, I kind of got the sense from you that you feel like you're a really good fit in the organization, both professionally and personally, and you seem to enjoy kind of the environment there. So could you talk a little bit more about that team aspect, what the team looks like to you, and how that fit was established?
Yeah, so I would say to any of your students that are looking for whether it be an internship or a full-time job, think about what your ideal team looks like, because I think it changes from person to person. I know for me, I was moving to Cincinnati where I really didn't know anyone in this city. And so I wanted to work with a lot of people close to my age that would love to go grab a drink after work and have more of that camaraderie. And I wanted a team that was relatively small, so we would be close knit, but other people maybe want to work with employees that are more established, have more wisdom to pass on. Maybe they want a really big team, so they have lots of movement within the current group, whatever it may be. But for me, I knew I wanted a relatively small team with a lot of camaraderie and young employees. And so from the beginning, my team has been a really good fit for me. And I also think Kroger's pretty special in that it just has a really wonderful culture. The employee who hired me actually moved on before I started full time. So I had a new manager who I'd never met starting out in the role. And yet the employee who had hired me, he still stayed in touch with me. We've grabbed coffee before, and he's really served as a mentor to me, even though I was never even his direct report. So that's just kind of the culture that I think we have at Kroger, and I think it's really special.